Hello, I'm Parker.
Hi, I'm Hayley.
Welcome to Authors and Auteurs.
In this episode, we will be discussing and analyzing Inception.
I just watched Inception for the first time. I finished it like 14 minutes ago.
Yeah, I watched it like almost a week ago. Can remind me what happened.
Oh yes, this is just like last week though when you watched Citizen Kane like right before, kind of like over the course of different things. But oh my goodness. I don't know if I got a
It's a lot.
headache. I don't know if I got a headache from the movie or from eating too much chocolate peanut butter bread that my sister made.
That's
But
funny.
it might have been both. So let's just go through this a little bit. I don't know how to process this. There was one part where there were 4 layers of the dreaming,
Mhm.
and that was like, I thought Leonardo DiCaprio was gonna die.
Well,
Because he took so long to wake up when the van was underwater. Alright, so here's basically what I understood from the movie. There's businessman wants his rival businessman counterpart to not take over the entire energy industry by putting this idea into his head that he should break up his empire and become his own person. And um, what was Leonardo DiCaprio's character's name? It's like
Cobb.
Hobb. That's right. It's Hobb? Really? Okay.
Cobb. No, with a C.
Cobb. That's right. Anyway, so Cobb is like an expert in dreams and things like that. So he puts together this team, and they go and they do that. But it also explores Cobb's past and all these terrible things that have happened. Well, not all. There's like one main thing, which is with his wife, and how she thought reality was a dream and killed herself because he put that idea into her head.
It's a lot.
The movie itself perfectly describes what it feels like to watch the movie.
Yeah.
Watching
Actually,
it, you're
yes.
like, this is how I feel right now, is what this is. That's just what this feels like. That itself is kind of a paradox because is the emotion coming from the viewer or is the emotion in the movie being transferred to the viewer? I mean, obviously it feels like it'd be the second one, but like how could you know? Because it's your interpretation of the film that is what you're experiencing. Because whenever you watch a movie, it's not the same as when somebody else watches that movie. Everyone's watching a different movie because it's what they think when they're watching it.
Yeah, it's like reading a book.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That intro sequence I still don't completely understand though. So he was doing like a little test thing with that guy to see if they wanted to work together, right? That was the intro.
Yeah, I believe so.
But then at the end, it's very similar to the beginning. For emotional effect, obviously, but plot-wise, that's just because they were in limbo and the guy had been there for so long, he was old, and Leonardo DiCaprio had only been there for a little bit. I should call him Cobb, but I remember it a second after. Anyway, he's like trying to remember what he's gone there to tell him. I'm still not sure why that looked exactly the same as it did at the beginning, but that could have just been because it's a movie. I mean, it was like an emotional thing, I think, because he remembered the first time that they met was in that dream.
Yeah.
Imagine being that, what's the girl's name? The student who is the architect.
Ariadne.
Imagine being her and then just kind of being at school and then this guy's like, hey, do you want to help me with something?
I would have been like, what is going on?
Yeah.
The pace is good.
The pacing is good.
I mentioned that a lot.
It's pretty fast paced. Everything happens so quickly. There's so much going on. I almost feel like I can't tell if it has a deeper meaning or if it's just so complex that it's just plot.
Time goes by so fast.
For me, it went by, I mean, things happen quickly in the movie, but it does feel like things were slower. I was like, that was only 2 hours. That was 2 hours? Really? I mean, I was in the movie. I haven't been that, like you said last week, that you hadn't been that into a movie in a long time. Neither have I. There was points in the movie where I was like, it is the movie perfectly explaining what it's like to watch that movie because it doesn't feel dreamlike, but it feels like you are not in reality when you're watching it.
Yeah.
And then like my shoe would fall off. I was wearing like sandals and my shoe fell off and I was like, oh my gosh. it It was like the going back through the levels, and I was like, I'm watching a movie right now. Okay.
That's so funny.
There was only like 2 points when I looked away. Both of them were to put my shoe back on. Yeah, I ended up standing up at one point in the movie, then sitting back down, and then standing up again, and then sitting back down. That movie.
I'm not sure if you heard this theory before, but amongst the film community, people think Inception is an allegory for filmmaking.
Interesting.
Because,
I didn't even consider that.
but you know, the man who impersonates other people in the dream would be the actor.
Oh.
Right? And then the architect would be like the production designer.
Interesting.
And the man who's getting the idea implanted would be the audience.
That does work. And the audience is willing. The audience is willing to try to implant the idea into themselves, putting effort into it.
Yeah.
But then, of course, they get shot. And then almost die.
Right. Yeah.
And then wake up.
Yeah.
And their life is forever changed by Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, but Christopher Nolan has indirectly denied it. He was like, oh, that's a good idea. That would have been cool. But it seems like that wasn't really intentional.
It doesn't feel intentional in the movie either, in my opinion. I could see that. Like, I mean,
I
of
agree
course,
with
it's a
that.
piece of art and people can get whatever they look at it with out of it. But I do think it's probably more about his perspective on religion. I would guess he's an atheist from that movie. Or I would guess that he's lost somebody in his life and was so attached to them that he, like, just tried to keep their memory alive and then realized that wasn't a way to do that. But from looking at it, if it's his perception of religion, then it would be saying that believing in God would mean being asleep or believing that the world is meaningless, which I don't think, I don't know, it's so hard to tell because the story is so complex that there's so many things that happen in there. And then it changes constantly how you think about what's happening in the movie. That's what it does so well, though, is it creates an atmosphere where anything could happen and you don't know what's about to happen. And you don't even try to guess because who knows?
Yeah, that's true.
The one point where I realized that he really, really understood how to get the audience was when she's about to press the button, the B button in the elevator in his subconscious. And then she doesn't because he moves her hand away. And you're like, wait, what is that? What is that? What is that? So then you find out kind of then, but then you really find out later. So he definitely understands pacing and he definitely understands story structure. There's even a point where somebody says the stakes have been raised, and at that point in screenplay writing, that's the part where you're supposed to raise the stakes. That's where you're supposed to say this is where things get really bad and things get really important.
Yeah.
And they literally say in the movie, oh, the stakes have been raised, which I just love when they do that because it makes it so much easier to understand what's going on.
What do you think? I definitely think that there's some symbolic meaning behind Leonardo DiCaprio's totem.
I mean, it was his
thing.
wife's. It was his wife's totem before his. Did you call it a spinny thing?
Yes.
I definitely think there's some symbolic meaning in Leonardo DiCaprio's spinny thing. But the fact that him spinning, I don't know. He got it from his wife, so he carries it with him everywhere. I think it could be a symbol for his memory of her. And about the ending of it, I actually saw an interview a couple of weeks ago where the actor who plays I think he's the grandfather, that guy, the older guy who recommends the student to him, that actor was having trouble with understanding the script. And Christopher Nolan said to him, here, I'll make it easy for you. If you're in the scene, it's reality. And he was like, okay. So I think that he meant that for the whole movie. I think that not that every scene without him is a dream, but that every scene where he's in it is definitely real. And so the ending scene is reality. I think the only thing that would have made it not real is if his wife was still there, which I was kind of expecting, but that didn't happen. I think we're supposed to expect that, though, because part of the message might be what didn't happen in the movie.
Right. Except, okay, the entire movie, he wouldn't look at his kids' faces.
Yeah.
Like, his wife would be like, look at our kids. He'd be like, no, I won't look. And then at the end, we see their faces and he looks. So I mean, that could be like, he's giving into the dream world and he's just like, I'm done. Like, I'm not gonna, like, fight this anymore. Or it's like, oh, this is reality? I don't know.
I think it's him.
Okay, there's so many ways you could
I
interpret.
think it's him coming back to reality. I think that the reason he didn't look at the kids in the dreams is because he didn't want to become what his wife was when she was sucked into the dream world. So he decided not to remember their faces, so that when he saw them for real, that would actually matter and he would know that was real. So it was like it's both a smaller and a bigger version of the don't build things off of memories principle that he tells that girl whose name starts with an A. Ariana? What? What is it? Ariani?
Ariadne.
What he tells her is to not build things from memory because he's done that and he knew what that did. So not building their faces from memory makes the dream world feel more fake to him. And he has to do that, otherwise he's going to lose track of everything.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
in real life, he can look at them because they're real and they exist, and he doesn't have to imagine their faces. That's what I think.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about this movie is that it can be interpreted in so many ways. Because I feel like most movies can just tell you things. This movie definitely has a lot of exposition, but it happens so fast you don't even like digest it. It's like
Right.
these are the rules. All right, go. And that's actually what happens in the movie. Again, it explains itself without telling you anything. And I mean that in actually three different ways. Oh, this is what happens when you watch Inception. It it's telling you these are the rules within the story of the movie, and these are the rules we're going to play by for the whole movie, and that's good to know. It's also telling you this is what it's going to feel like to watch this movie, and this is how you're going to experience it. And it's telling you this is what it feels like to know the message of the movie, and it doesn't tell you what the message is explicitly, obviously, if there is a message. Maybe the message is that there is no message and that it's meaningless. Or maybe we're supposed to think that because that's how it looks, but maybe there's actually meaning. And it just keeps going, just like the movie.
It just keeps going.
So those are the three ways I think that can be interpreted. Yeah, that's just talking about how the exposition feels for the audience. That's just the beginning of the movie. And then the story happens. And the story is it's definitely got some character, but it feels like definitely this movie would not have worked if he hadn't wanted to see his kids so badly, because that's the main emotional drive of the story. If he didn't have that, the whole thing would just be completely plot driven and no one would be anything but like a puppet.
Cobb has a strange attachment to the architect.
Yes.
He doesn't know her very well, but
he tells her all this stuff.
Yeah, he talks to her about like all of his problems. Why do you think that is?
I hadn't even thought about that question, but I think I have an answer for it. Basically, when she walked in on him dreaming and then goes into his dream, he cannot avoid telling her anything about this, because now she knows. And if he doesn't tell her, then she's probably going to think about something worse than what actually happened. But then at the end, she finds out actually what happened. And I think maybe the grandpa, the old guy with, I don't remember his name, recommended her as a student to him because he knew that the old guy knew that she would be able to figure out what happened to him and be able to solve his problem through this mission, which he knew he couldn't stop him from doing, but was afraid that it would ruin him because of how it would involve his wife or her memory. So her figuring that out is anticipated by the older gentleman whose name I cannot remember, who's the grandpa. And the reason that she figures it out is probably because she's similar to him in that she wants to understand the rules of this world, and she does things that he kind of tells her not to do even after he tells her not to do it. That's how she's similar to him, is because he knows the rules and he still breaks them. So both of them are like that, but she's younger than him and she hasn't done this as much, so she's not as jaded as he is, and also not as broken into the idea of breaking the rules. So she's more reluctant to break them, and that's another reason why she is able to stay there without being ruined herself. And the fact that she's a student and younger also probably means she doesn't have as many skeletons as in her closet. So these things aren't following her around, and that's really important for this mission, considering how huge of an issue it was that he was having this memory of his wife. And I think when they started on the snow and the third level of the dream, they when she walked up to him, I thought it was his wife with the mask on and the goggles and the hair. I thought it was his wife. And I don't know if we were supposed to think that or not, but I think assuming that I was meant to think that, what that would mean is she is so similar to his wife that having her with him is able to help him break that memory of her because he's already being reminded in this way. And it's real. So it trumps the memory that's all fake and one-dimensional.
Yeah, that is interesting. I like that. I like that. 'Cause I was thinking about that for a while. Like, why is he so obsessed with this college girl? Like, okay, yes, that makes sense.
There's so many smaller motifs in the movie too, like the thing about how the stairs can just keep going, and then when you notice that they're doing that, then you fall. So what does that mean?
Okay, I don't. What's that thing called when, like, you know, when you're like sleeping and then you feel like you're falling or something?
I don't know if there's a name for that, but yes.
There it is.
Well, I know that when they wake up, it's because they're falling because of the sedative they took makes it so that they can't wake up any other way. And it's
Yeah, but that's like a legit thing.
I mean, I've that's happened to me where I've been asleep and then I felt like I was falling and then I woke up like that and it feels real. So, I mean, that movie does capture that feeling and it feels so violent without really being violent, like especially at the very end when they're kind of in limbo and the ocean is there. It's just relentless. Like they're completely soaked and it just keeps going. And it's different from the rain because the rain's coming from the sky and it's coming from reality. But the ocean is all pretend. It has no link to the actual weather that's happening or the van going into the water. The ocean is just there. And so when they're kind of being thrown, it's just a few seconds. But that first shot of the movie is the ocean, so that is significant. Like the first thing you see of the entire movie is just blurry foam. I mean, it's got to be significant in some way. The beach idea is significant because that's the life he built with his wife. That was all pretend. But the ocean itself is significant because how relentless and aggressive it is, and that's just how the movie feels, possibly. Or there's an actual plot connection.
Yeah, that's interesting. A little off topic, but something I noticed was when Leonardo DiCaprio and the guy who was shot, when they're in, you know, the opening scene?
Yes.
Where they're in that, like, the gold
Yeah.
room. And then later in the movie, they're back in that room. But I thought this was interesting. The guy who was shot actually looks like he aged.
Yeah.
And Leonardo DiCaprio does not look like he aged.
Yeah. I don't know why the old guy was old in the beginning, or why the rival businessman who hires him at the beginning, he is old, but that doesn't make sense because later in the movie it makes sense, but that wasn't a flashback.
Yeah.
I wish they would have used that carpet idea that they introduced within the first 2 minutes of the movie, because that's all it is. It's just that one moment. Yeah. Like, they could have done that at the end where they were like, the guy notices, like, this carpet is different. And then they're like, oh, the key to understanding reality is carpet selection. Or something similar to that. Like, it could have been something else, like some small detail, because I think that idea is, like, it could have been more significant to the movie. But they already were doing enough already. There was no need for that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, this movie is just, gosh, there's so much that needs to be understood that I can't understand.
It takes so much effort to follow the plot that kind of everything else gets kind of out of focus, which probably is intentional, or he just got excited making the movie and just put so many things in. But if English class has taught me anything, it's to assume that literally every part of everything is intentional in the movie and books. So that's how I'm going to consider this.
Yeah. I'm stuck on that stair thing because you mentioned it and, like, I don't understand how that just went over my head.
I mean, what does it mean, though? Because he also uses that.
What does
he uses that to kill the last part of the subconscious security in the office building level, which is the second level of the second dream. So he uses that, but he introduces it earlier, and no one gets hurt then. So I think he's saying that breaking illusions can remove security from your mind, where understanding that something isn't the way it looks can hurt you.
Oh.
And that comes back because his wife understands that their dream world is fake, and then that continues all the way into reality where she still feels like it's fake and then kills herself. That's the same idea.
Oh.
I feel bad for saying that nonchalantly. That's like a very big emotional beat of the movie, and it matters a lot. And it's really sad that she died. But the idea is that you can become so disillusioned that it itself becomes an illusion.
That is interesting. That's a great sentence.
Why, thank you.
A great job forming words.
I do enjoy forming words. It's one of my favorite things. The harshness of the movie is interesting. Every moment that they're not in his house, in a memory or in real life, the lighting is so harsh and exhausting to look at. Like everything, there's no soft light. But even inside in office buildings where the lights are normally kind of stretched out, which make a soft light, the light is very yellow and very harsh and creates sharp shadows all the time. Probably communicates just how harsh reality feels for him. Even in a dream, it still feels exhausting, and the light is so harsh. I just watched a play at my school yesterday, or it was like an amalgamation of plays. But the way they light stage plays is with really harsh light, just so the audience can see them. So it does feel that way in this, but the light is always directional because it's a movie. On the stage play, it's from the front, just front lit, so it's just bright, unless you're looking from the side. But in this, it is directional.
I wonder if that's another reason why people think that it has to do with filmmaking because of the way the light is.
Interesting. Older films have harsher light most of the time than the newer films, just because of the way shooting in black and white looks. But newer films tend to have soft light. It's unusual to have harsh light in a movie like this, in color especially. So that could be another reason people feel like it's an homage to filmmaking or storytelling, because it's a more classical way of setting up an image. And what struck me is how even when the light seemed to not... It was really dark, a lot of the movie. Their faces are almost never lit completely. There's always shadow all the time. Except when he's in his house. There's softer light and it's more ambient. Even when they're outside, it's like really like dark shadows on their faces all the time. So what do you think that means? Because I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't know either. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be a reason for
And
that.
it feels harsh. It feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a very odd thing to do. So I would assume it's intentional, but why? I feel like that's just the main question right now.
Why? Why, Chris? Why? It's like, I don't know, it looked cool.
Oh my gosh, imagine.
I just want to encourage people to have a good night's sleep.
Oh my gosh.
That's what it's all about. You know, kids these days, it's important to sleep well. Then you can...
It's funny because weren't they saying like I can't sleep anymore or something like? Wasn't there a thing about that?
He can only sleep when he's on sedatives, or the people in the hospital can only sleep on sedatives. And then they're like, well, that's so sad. They're not in reality. And then the guy there, the guy who runs the weird little hospital underneath somebody's building, is like, who are you to say that this is not their reality now? And then they just kind of back away from him and go out. Yeah, but that guy, I think, was also in the illusion of believing that a dream could become someone's reality, because that idea ruined people. That idea is what caused him to bring the idea that it's all fake into his wife's mind, which caused her to die in the end.
Interesting.
Also the fact that he and his wife loved the construction of, like, just the way that modern architecture was, like glass office buildings with really, really harsh, like concrete floors, very industrial. He said he and his wife wanted that, but they wanted it as a house and not an apartment. So he wanted his home to be kind of harsh and industrial, but was stuck with the soft lit, wooden, natural, with grass outside house that they had. And he was upset with that. So he made a better one in his dream, he thought. And what's interesting is the second dream level, that's all an office building. That's the same office building that he wanted to live in with his wife.
Oh.
Like, do you remember? Because the way when he's teaching her to build the staircase, with the other guy is teaching her to build a staircase, it's the same room. It's the same kind of area.
Right.
That connects it with the idea of an illusion that will break you if you realize it exists. And then when everything's spinning, that's just, that's chaos. But it has some significance with the idea of an office building feeling like home that you want to have complete ownership of. And then zero gravity, then they can't be woken up without a huge jolt that's really carefully orchestrated. That's an incomplete thought, but it's there now. I mean, it definitely connects with the idea that the illusion can break you if you realize it exists.
Yeah, I can understand like that correlating with religion,
Yeah.
recognizing a supernatural force.
Everything's changed, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's meant to communicate that he doesn't know what that would do to you.
Mm-hmm.
What would it do? I mean, that's the idea of most religions, is the fact that understanding that's how the world is would completely change how you live. And it doesn't for most people, because it's so hard to believe and understand, because that would change everything, and people aren't comfortable with that. And that's another idea in the movie, is how uncomfortable everything is because he doesn't want to believe in reality.
Yeah.
So that's why the harsh lighting is everywhere but in his house, because his house is reality. And when he's there, he understands that that's what reality is supposed to be, and that's where he feels the most remorse for being in a dream. And so when he's outside of that space, he's trying to constantly forget about that and deceive himself, and it affects everyone around him. So everyone is lit harsh. And the shadows it creates could mean like a part of them is missing because you can't see it, just because of how much he's trying to create an illusion that he believes in, and how that affects how he interacts with others.
Interesting. Wow. I think, okay, this is off topic.
That's okay.
By the way, but I think that the totem, I think it has to do with the idea of like the carousel never stops turning, you know, like life just goes on, like
things just keep going even if you don't think about it.
Yeah, and that kind of feels like the movie a little bit.
It just keeps going. Another interesting thing is Arena.
Oh my gosh, you cannot. The architect.
The architect. Her totem is a chess piece.
Oh, she's kind of like a chess piece.
But the fact she's a bishop is interesting, because the queen moves with the combination of moves from a bishop and a rook, and her being a bishop could mean that somebody was a queen who had a combination of her and somebody else. The rook could maybe be his friend, and maybe Leonardo DiCaprio is the queen, or maybe his wife was the queen.
I would guess it's his wife.
Probably.
Because we said earlier that the architect reminds him of his wife.
But she's only half of it, half of what's real. That's an interesting idea. And so she isn't, in reality, she's not just a pawn. She has more power than that, but she's not exactly what would be the most powerful. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Maybe his friend is a rook. I don't know. Maybe he's the rook.
Maybe.
Oh, wait, if he's the rook, then he is different from her, but in a way that if they were the same, they would be the same as his wife.
Oh, that is good. That is interesting. I like that.
And the fact that his totem is what his wife's totem was, and that is the same object that he used to implant the idea that caused her to die, and he still carries it with her. He carries it with him everywhere, and he leaves it on the table at the end, so he's letting go of her memory.
Oh, yeah.
And he doesn't care if it's reality or not, but we know that it probably was. So he's living in reality with his children, and he's let go of the memory of his wife. And the fact that it's spinning and then it stops, maybe life still keeps going even when he feels like it stops.
I don't know.
The symmetrical nature of the film itself, and the way that things being tested and things happening happen, because the beginning is the same as the ending, visually speaking, and shot sequence is very similar. And then the point where the idea of the infinite staircase is introduced and the point where it's used are also fairly symmetrical in the runtime of the film. That's a screenwriting technique, is just to give the audience the emotional satisfaction of things at the beginning being significant in the end. But it's also part of the story, because things that he wanted to forget about that were presented at the beginning are remedied in the end, so it all ends up being okay. The question is, I think, whether in this interpretation he's trying to say that accepting reality is good because it frees you from religion saying that what's real is actually not real, or understanding religion helped you understand reality and see what's real and what's not real, or holding onto someone's memory is causing people to have a false sense of reality, and then letting that go is what makes things real, or reality isn't what matters, and putting and just the subconscious and the ideas that are put there are what really affect us. Or or we could keep going, but I gotta stop.
I know this could really go on for like hours.
Yep, and that would be almost as exhausting as the movie, I think.
It's
I
funny.
I think it would probably be easier to rewatch than to watch it a first time. Like you might enjoy it more because you don't
Oh,
have to
yeah.
keep track of the plot so much. But I still don't know if I want to do that because it is really harsh. Like it like you said, it doesn't stop. It doesn't ever let up. Everything just keeps happening. And then in the end, it's a very satisfying ending. It's more satisfying knowing that that was reality in the end, but it's more satisfying to interpret it as if it were still a dream in the end, or we don't know. But I do think that it was real in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's funny because for me, also, the ending was satisfying.
Hmm.
I thought it was perfect, but generally, cliffhangers aren't satisfying, and that was kind of a cliffhanger in a way.
I guess so, but the top
I
was
mean,
about to
if
fall.
you're just, imagine you're like the general audience
Yeah. Okay.
and you are like, oh my gosh, wait, it didn't fall?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Exactly. But I'm gonna feel like it was resolved for me, so that is okay.
Yeah, I would go with that too.
That might just say more about me than the movie, but that's okay with me because I watched the movie. Now it's my. I heard this great quote that I don't remember who said it, but it's that reading a book is like music, where you're reading sheet music and playing it on your instrument. So you're doing your interpretation of the music as it's read. So
Mm.
imagining the story is you playing the story in your mind the way you're playing it. So I think it's the same thing with the movie, maybe to a lesser extent because the creator does have a lot of control over how you perceive what's on your screen, but they don't have any control over how you watch it, when you watch it, where you watch it, how loud you have it turned up, anything like that. That's all you playing the movie for you. So it's going to be different than any other time anyone's ever watched it, and you have to be okay with that.
How would you rate Inception out of 10?
Out of 10? I mean, I always have to consider what I feel like the message is. And the message I got from it, I don't think is the most positive thing, even though it's really fuzzy. I do feel like it's saying that it's hopeless to hold on to things in a certain way. That maybe it's just because I'm not comfortable with that idea, but I don't like it very much. The film itself is excellent. It's very well made, but at times, since the lighting is so dark, it's hard to tell what exactly is happening, which I think is, from what I can tell, a trait of Christopher Nolan and his new movie Tenet, where you can't hear anything that anyone says. So it's similar to that just because of how complex the plot is and how hard it is to understand what's happening. Like that takes effort. You have to be attentive and care about what's happening to get into the story. So out of 10, I'd give it I give it a solid 7, I think. I think it's going to stick around for a long time. I don't think this movie's going to be forgotten very easily.
I do agree with that.
But I think that as far as a film that, like what I think of it, I think it's a 7 out of 10. But I do think it's going to be in people's classics of the 21st century collection.
Right, yeah, for sure. Yes, I do agree. I do think that this movie will be a classic, for sure. I would rate this a lot higher
Yeah, I was,
than you. I am, okay, the pace of the movie is very important to me, as you
yeah.
know. This movie, the pace is solid. It's phenomenal. And I am a little bit biased because I am kind of obsessed with dreams.
Hmm.
A little bit. So I do really enjoy that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think the message I get from it is more positive than
That
yours.
probably influences your rating as well. So that makes
So
sense.
yeah. So I would actually give it like a 9.5 out of 10.
9.5?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You're saying it's a near perfect movie?
Yeah, for me it is.
You rated it half a point higher than Citizen Kane. I
That's
mean,
not like that much.
I guess so. I guess that makes sense. Oh my goodness. Uh, I don't know. I didn't enjoy it that much. I enjoyed the film aspect of it, the artistry of it, and the construction of the plot, and the pacing, and the acting, and all that. Everything else is really uncomfortable and harsh. It's so just like it's relentlessly harsh. It's just like I don't know. It just keeps putting you in extremely stressful situation after extremely stressful situation where you can barely understand what's going on, and that is
Yes, but I love that. I love that. I
I,
don't
I
like horror
enjoy
things, but that kind of like stress.
I enjoy the immersion of it, and I enjoy the idea that like you forget that you're watching the movie. I don't enjoy being sucked into a reality where everything is constantly falling apart and we got to get out now. Like it's great, it's suspenseful, but it's not enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, like I said, it's just for me, it's like the perfect movie for me.
Yes,
Like this is
okay.
exactly what I would want in a film.
Nice. Now we know.
So, yeah. Yes.
It did achieve wow for me. Definitely that. Any movie that makes me stand up while I'm watching it definitely achieves that. And it is, I think, it's a very original movie, and I really appreciate that and how well it was able to execute this concept. It's very clear, but very complicated. Where
Right.
if you took the time to understand every part of it, you could, but it happens so fast that everything just is kind of confusing sometimes.
Yeah. Also, I normally find that when people create sci-fi worlds, their rules are a little bit all over the place, and this was very like,
Very consistent with its rules.
which I appreciate that a lot
Yeah.
because I can recognize that
Really,
that's
really
hard
good
to
world
achieve.
building. Really good world building, which is kind of ironic to say about this movie.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Authors and Auteurs. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and listen to our podcasts on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We also have an Instagram account where you can follow us for updates or information on future episodes. Thank you for listening.